From O3 Films at Watts Creative Studios, this is the Route 29 Stalker, and I'm your host, Woody Graham Watts. The further and further we go into these cases, the more questions I have. Keep in mind, this whole experience is new to me. I've never claimed to know the inner workings of an investigation. My goal has always been to help these families in some small way, but I'm learning so much in this process. And before I go to another location, I feel like it could benefit me knowing what to look for and help me understand the timeline a little bit better. To help me better understand some of the finer details and what law enforcement looks for, I asked my friend John to hopefully shed some light on the process. Then, armed with this, when we make another trip to Culpeper, I can hopefully better understand why things were done the way they were, or maybe find ways they could have been done differently. My first question to John was, how do you approach a missing persons case in general? If someone is late or doesn't show up at a scheduled time, what are the next steps?
Well, my name is John Carey, and I'm a former police officer for the Lynchburg Police Department. I've 20 years of police work. I worked field operations. I worked crime prevention for a little while. But when I left the police department after 20 years, I was the detective sergeant over our crime scene unit. People sometimes leave. So the first officer that gets there as they're learning part about this. Sometimes families get distracted, sometimes they're late, traffic is backed up, things along those lines. So when an adult goes missing, there's a part of a child is completely different. If a child is missing, you pull out all the stops. If an adult is a little tardy to an appointment or something along those lines, there's a part of you that just says, okay, let's wait on this, let's see where they are. Again, they could have been caught up in traffic, they could have stopped for dinner. So there has to be a certain ounce of caution, if you will. Once they've gone past that reasonable time and you truly feel that there's something else, then we need to start looking at, okay, what route did they travel? Where would they have gone? Could they have stopped? What was the time that they left? Were there any traffic issues that were going on that may have caused that? A little bit later in the investigation, should they use like a credit card or debit card, we can track where they were used or where they could have been used, things along those lines, so we can establish a timeline. If they stopped for gas, where they were, what their location was, and then and kind of where their route was, or at least a general proximity of where they could have been. So if they were at XYZ store, used a credit card, we know what date, we know what time it is. Knowing that, average speed is a certain, we can kind of estimate as far as where they could have gone or where they could have ended up, so to speak, and at least create a radius from where that starting point is. So we can kind of limit where that search is based off of at least some of that minimal high-level information right off of the bat.
I know I keep coming back to this. It's the one thing that sticks with me the most. Her credit card on Clay Street. Then, her jacket found in another county. I asked what would be his next steps, given what we know now about the finding of this card and how an investigator would use that information at the time and where they would go from there.
She could have stopped there, had a friend in the neighborhood that maybe nobody else in the family do. So, hey, have you seen this person? Have you seen this car? Kind of start a sweep and maybe start from an outward peripheral, area from where that credit card was found. The person that found the credit card, hey, did you see anybody drop it? Did you see anybody lose it? A lot of times the immediate area right where that information or where that piece of evidence was found is your best starting point. So from there, you can kind of work your area around. Also try to take advantage of media. Hey, this person is missing. Some items were found maybe in a certain area. Anybody who knows, call an anonymous tip line. If your tip pans out, maybe we'll pay you a little bit of a reward money. You want to look at it from both sides of the coin, so to speak, because you ideally want to look at it as nothing has happened and everything is going to turn out safe. However, there is a part of you that says, well, maybe something did happen. So the most important thing is to keep an objective opinion. You don't want to look at it from such a narrow scope that, oh my God, this person got abducted, this is the worst case scenario, nor do you want to look at it as they'll probably be fine, they'll call you tomorrow afternoon, don't worry about it. Somewhere in the middle between the two extremes, it could be reality. So you want to be as objective as you can, and you let the evidence and then you let the situations and the people that you talk to guide which direction you want to go and decide what your next steps are going to be after that. Now, is my investigation and my opinion would be gearing more towards this is not normal. People don't throw their own credit cards out the window. People don't arbitrarily drop their car somewhere, leave it. Now I'm starting to go from maybe this is best case scenario to maybe this potentially could be worst case scenario. So now we need to start changing our thoughts, changing our process, and start changing our approach a little bit. What is the evidence telling you? You started kind of maybe headed in this direction, the car maybe veered off in a different direction. If something happened to her and somebody else took the car, then what direction are they headed? What generality are they thinking? Now, she was originally headed northbound, now the car is headed southbound or southeast or something, so maybe we need to start changing our approach, our look, our direction, our focus into a different geographical area. There could be certain bits of information that could come up. And again, some of it could come from eyewitness testimony, from what they've told you, tidbits of information, or you could look at what the forensic evidence has to offer. Was there fingerprints found on the credit card? Could there be touch DNA that's on there? Same thing for the jacket. Same thing for the vehicle. Could there be fingerprints? Could there be DNA that's left inside? Did they drink a drink? Did they smoke a cigarette? Any of those other things would leave you good possible evidence, forensic evidence that could be used later to link you to a suspect and probably to the conviction in court. Everything is relevant. I'm sure probably growing up, you probably did the thing in school where they told somebody in the beginning of the line, hey, pass this down. By the time it gets to the end, it's completely different than what it was to begin with. So when you're conducting these interviews and you're trying to elicit information back, everything is kind of graded on a bell curve, so to speak. You're going to have your two extremes. Somebody's going to say the person was 5'3". Another person could describe them as 6'7" in talking about the same person. So what you're looking for are patterns and consistencies. So out of 10 different people, if 8 of them are saying he had black hair, odds are he probably has black hair. Some may have described it as a dirty brown hair. Somebody could have described it as jet black. Take the extremes off the table. You're looking for that pattern or something that's consistent across every single one that everybody has explained. So out of those 20 people, you start building those patterns of what looks the same, what sounds the same. Those same descriptors are probably going to be your most accurate starting points. So that kind of pattern is going to give you just yet one more piece of evidence of what am I looking for? Who am I looking for? Is it the truck? Is it the vehicle? Is it the person, how tall they are, what their skin tone color was, what their hair color was? Those things are going to give you the most accurate description, finding the average mean, so to speak, for everybody.
Now I'm getting a clear picture of the process and why an investigation can take so long. Sometimes you can't jump to conclusions or speculate. An investigator can't afford to do that. I then asked John about the actual place where she was found. A person had been in the area and noticed buzzards in the sky. What if any one of us had been that person? Or if while recording this podcast, we stumble on something? What exactly should we do? And even more important, what is an investigator looking for?
The first thing that you do is you don't approach the crime scene. As counterproductive as that sounds, that's the last thing that you want to do initially. The first thing that you do is you talk to whoever the first officer was. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you experience? Tell me exactly what's going on. And then you basically work an outside perimeter in. Start from the very outside. You want to take in the big picture. Did you notice or see anything different? Were there tire tracks? Were there anything that could be what are called fragile pieces of evidence that could have been destroyed? Over that length of time, the odds of being able to find some pieces of evidence diminish quite a bit. Tire tracks, if it's rained quite a bit, or they're not going to have the detail. Unfortunately, DNA evidence will erode over time depending on temperatures, things along those lines. Same thing with shoe impressions, things. So you have to be sensitive. Then think to yourself, and then again, this was the most interesting part of police work. If you were the one that unfortunately were to do this, how would you do it? Where would you have walked in? Where would you have stepped? Once you have understood, or at least framed in how somebody else could have done it, then you approach the crime scene physically from a different angle. Because of some evidence being very fragile, you don't want to disturb it. You don't want to change it. That one small little drop of blood, if you step on it, could mean the difference between finding the suspect or not finding the suspect. So you want to be very careful about introducing your own evidence into the scene, your own shoe impressions, your own information, while still securing what's there to be able to bring that out so that it can be tested in a laboratory so that those things can be discovered. So you start from the outside. Number one step is you always photograph. You always take pictures. This is the way the scene was, the way I found it. Before anybody walked up to the body, these are overall pictures of the scene. This is how things done. And then you start slowly narrowing that perimeter until you actually get to where, the person or whatever your core piece of evidence is. Then you start taking a look at, okay, what are things that are basically not normal? Is the shirt torn? Is there holes that are punctured in it? Are there anything that seems a little outside of what the average would be? That's where you start focusing your attention, is on small little things like that. To me, that was the best part about doing the forensics work, is you got paid to pay attention to stuff that most people would overlook. That was the fine-tune, that was the most rewarding part about it, when you were able to find that one thing that most everybody overlooked. That can mean the difference between keeping a case open or closing a case. So once you eventually get down to the body, then your job is to photograph, you document it as it is, and then you take that, what the human remains from there, it goes to the forensic pathologist at the state medical examiner's office, and they're able to do what they do from a specialist point of view in discerning what the cause and the manner and the time of death is from there. They process the scene correctly. They would have collected the evidence that was felt pertinent at the time. The body was checked by the medical examiner in the office in Roanoke, so they were able to determine the cause and the manner of death, as well as the time frame, that, to the best of their ability, that they can at least narrow down of when it probably did happen. But technology constantly changes. There's always the infamous cold case squad that always goes back and takes a look at some of these things and just says, hey, this case has been dormant for 10 or 15 years. It's been unsolved. The ultimate reward of anybody is to bring closure to a case. It's very sad. It's very unfortunate that this happened to this poor young lady. But to be able to go back 10, 15, 20, 25 years later and be able to bring closure to the family and say, we were able to find out who did this. Now, fingerprints and DNA are great. Once we have them and they're compared against the lab database, that's awesome. But if there's no DNA to compare it to, if they don't have a match, then unfortunately it kind of sits in their own little version of a cold case file, and it's compared against new DNA samples that are brought in. And if they never get a match, then unfortunately that's a dead lead and we have to look at something else. So without knowing everything that was collected, what all evidence was there, it's really kind of hard to say I would have done this or I would have done that. I can fairly confidently say that they've done everything that they probably could. It's just one of those sad, unfortunate things. Not every homicide, unfortunately, gets solved. I wish we could. But the ultimate goal is there's a difference between solving a case and making sure that the proper person is held accountable. That's one of the reasons why the Virginia Department of Forensic Science is going back and looking at some of these cases of people that are in prisons and exonerating. I'm sure you've read stories in the news and online, because we want to hold people accountable, but most importantly, we want to make sure it's the proper people that are being held accountable for crimes. So it's nice to be able to say, yes, we closed a case, but we want to make sure that it's done correctly.
One question that I feel is the most important, and I ask myself almost every night since starting this podcast: can the Route 29 stalker actually be caught?
If they were able to attain a DNA profile from the body or from the car or a set of fingerprints, I've had cases in my career where 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years went by, and I'd get a random letter from the lab that says, hey, congratulations, we got a hit on your fingerprints, or we got a hit on your DNA profile. We have a match that says these fingerprints or these DNAs match a specific person. Ultimate wish and the hope is that somehow, somewhere down the road, something does show up.
If you have any questions you would like asked, please visit Route29Stalker.com and ask them on our discussion boards, or call the number we've set up just for this podcast, and we may use it in an upcoming episode. The more people focusing on who the Route 29 stalker is, the better chance we have at solving this.
For more information about this podcast and what we've found regarding the Route 29 stalker, visit Route29Stalker.com, Route29Stalker.com. As we investigate this, we will be releasing all the information we gather on this website. We also have discussion boards. Thanks for listening. Meet us back here for the next episode.